How many times have you sat down to do some work and your brain tells you I can't be bothered, and you just give up the rest of the day, you do nothing, and you feel bad the next day? How many times has that happened to you? This happened to me a lot when I was preparing for medical exams. I'd planned to do 150 questions in a day. I'd planned to do X number of pages reading per day, go through X number of modules per day, and I get down to it and I just can't be bothered. And my brain is powerful, so it tells me to, oh, you know what, you could do it tomorrow, or why don't you leave it? This happened to me a lot, so I'm sure it happens to you guys as well. So I want to talk about 3 strategies that you can use to beat this feeling, because otherwise we sit there and we procrastinate and suddenly everything seems more interesting than doing work, and before you know it, you've wasted a whole day. 3 key strategies to help you get past this difficult period, because this is going to happen to everybody. Number 1, chunking things down. Number 2, making sure you have small regular rewards. And number 3, accountability. Chunk things down, small regular rewards, accountability. What do these 3 things mean? And firstly, why is it important to have a strategy? Because motivation will only get you so far. Telling yourself, oh come on, I need to do it, I've got to do it, is only going to get you so far. You need strategies to defeat the feeling that your brain is trying to put into your mind. So strategy number 1, keeping things small, chunking things down. This is super important. Sometimes you think, okay, 150 questions looks like too much. I know I can't be bothered to 150 questions. It can take me so long. I'm just not in the mood to do it. Before you know it, you're switched off. However, if you start to chunk things down into small manageable bits, it makes a huge difference. And not just chunking down the questions, but the bit that leads you to even starting. So chunk things down into very small steps. Step number 1, I'm going to go to my room and sit down on my desk. Step number 2, I need to turn on my laptop. Step number 3, I need to log into my question bank system. Step number 4, I need to get my notepad next to me, or whatever it might be. So before you know it, and then step number 5, do the first question. So straight away, you've got 5 little, very manageable, very small chunks. But as you start ticking these off, you start to get your brain into that mode of winning. Okay, I'm actually achieving something. I'm moving closer to my target. Yes, 150 questions still seems far away, but at least you're on that pathway of accomplishment and completing tasks. So you start to get into gear, and before you know it, you start to get ready to do those 150 questions. So chunk things down, not just the actual questions, but the bit that gets you to even start the work in the first place. Little, manageable, focused goals that don't seem too much, but get you on that process of progress. And then you can chunk the questions down. So then you can say, right, I've got 150 questions, chunk that down as well. Okay, then I'm going to do the first 10. Then I'm going to do 10 to 20. Then I'm going to do 20 to 30. Then 30 to 40. And before you know, again, you're on a roll and you start to move through. And then before you know it, you reach 150. So one of the key things, you've got to want to trick your brain that the task in front of me is not that big. It's just small little chunks. And I need you to focus on the next small little chunk. And before you know it, you get to that period of I can't be bothered. And before you know it, you've done your work. So number 1, chunk these down. Number 2, match this with small regular rewards. Now, what people often use rewards. They've used rewards for many years. If I do 150 questions, I will be able to do this. But sometimes that's not strong enough. That reward feeling is not strong enough to drag you through the 150 questions. So you almost need to have lots of mini rewards, and you can correlate them to the chunks that you're doing. So say, for example, once I get to the point where I've done 1 question, I can have a little reward. I don't know what that might be. It might be just check Facebook or whatever. It's just something really, really simple. When I get to 10 questions, I can have, I don't know, a snack. When I get to 50 questions, I can, I don't know, take a 5-minute break. When I get to 100 questions, I can call somebody that I really want to call. I don't know, just have little regular positive things that drive you towards it, but don't have the distance between now and that positive thing too long, because you won't be able to push through everything to get to that end point. You'll just do it anyway. So regular chunks and regular little rewards as you go along are going to help you to push through those little barriers even when you don't feel like doing it. So number 1, chunk things down. Number 2, have lots of regular little rewards. And the third thing is accountability. This is super important. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much you do, how much you tell yourself, how many strategies you use, you still can't get yourself to start doing that piece of work. However, if you've made yourself accountable to somebody else, you're much more likely to push yourself through. Why? Because if you're accountable to somebody else, they're going to ask you why you haven't done X, Y, and Z. And then you have to think about reasons and excuses. And there's so many times you can do that when you're accountable to somebody. So there are a number of ways of doing this. Number 1, you could be accountable to people in your study group. So everybody has to do 100 questions a day. And if you haven't, you've got to give reasons and excuses as to why. Number 2, You could be accountable to people in your family. This could be spouse, it could be parents, but some of the most powerful ones are your children. Like this, how many times can you tell your 5 or 6 year old why you haven't done 100 questions? They're not gonna buy it. They're gonna keep pushing you. So find somebody that you can be accountable to, tell them this is what your plan, and make sure they ask you at the end of the day, if you haven't done it, why, because then you got to start thinking about excuses. And it often seems easier to do the work than to think of an excuse every single day as to why you haven't done it. So 3 things that work in conjunction, I'm sure, will boost your ability to get work done on those days that you don't want to do it. Number 1, keep things in small chunks, not just the work itself, but the bit leading up to the work. Number 2, make sure that you have little mini rewards along the way. And number 3, make sure you're accountable to somebody rather than your own brain. Because remember, your brain is powerful. Your brain doesn't want to do it. Your brain is trying to protect you from all this work. So it's going to give you all these reasons not to do it. You've got to have strategies, not just motivation, strategies to deal with this and beat it, get that work done, because that's the difference. Everyone can work on a day that you want to do work. Anyone can do that, but it's the days that you don't want to work that make the difference. That's the difference between someone who will just go below the bar, between someone who just goes above the bar. Those days are key, and you've got to have strategies, and these 3 things can hopefully help. We have loads more videos like this on motivation, getting you started, exam technique, etc. on our social media streams, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Dr. Aman Arora. Have a look, subscribe for more videos like this. Our website has loads of other forms of teaching, whether it be audio teaching or online teaching or face-to-face teaching or flashcard teaching or mock exam teaching. But none of that matters. None of that matters. You can have all the resources in the world. If you don't get your brain right, if you don't have strategies to beat it when it's trying to beat you, then you're going to struggle. It doesn't matter what resources you have. I really hope this helps. Have a look at the website, auroramedicaleducation.co.uk, for much more like this. You know the hashtag #CanPassWillPass, hashtag I went with Arora. Try these strategies today. I promise you they will work.